Donald Trump's Attorney General nominee, Todd Blanche, has now said he has officially rescinded Trump's controversial slush fund. The move seems designed to placate GOP Senators John Cornyn and Thom Tillis, who said they would not vote to confirm Blanche without written assurances that the fund was dead. Now, with these assurances duly issued, the committee vote to advance Todd Blanche's nomination to the full Senate will happen tomorrow. Now, what exactly were these assurances that got Blanche's nomination back on track? Blanche released a pair of written statements. The first statement, which was a signed memorandum from Blanche, reassured Republican holdouts Cornyn and Tillis that the $1.8 billion so-called weaponization fund will not go forward. The other statement, which was unsigned and issued by the Justice Department, clarifies the limits of Trump's immunity deal with the IRS. Cornyn and Tillis released a joint statement saying in part, quote, "We are pleased that the Department of Justice has issued a formal order terminating the anti-weaponization fund, addressing concerns that multiple of our Republican colleagues share." But they may have spoken too soon. The New York Times is now reporting that these statements issued are full of, quote, loopholes. According to the Times, quote, "The original terms of the documents creating the fund said it may be modified only with the written agreement of the parties," a reference to Donald Trump, his sons Eric and Donald Trump Jr., the Trump Organization, and specific government agencies. Mr. Blanche's orders, however, is a government document signed only by him. The apparent deal between Blanche, Cornyn, and Tillis comes just hours after the president doubled down on the fund, telling reporters on Air Force One that he'd be open to bringing it back. Take a listen.
This would be a reimbursement for the pain that they suffer. A lot of people like it. If they don't approve Todd, I put it back on the table. A lot of people like it. A lot of big supporters of Trump like it.
And just hours ago, Trump was asked about the deal that Blanche had struck, and he made it clear that he didn't know what exactly Todd Blanche had agreed to. Listen up.
Mr. President, did you sign off on Todd Blanche rescinding?
I didn't look at it. All I know is that Todd Blanche is great. He's going to do a great job. Everybody knows it. And I understand there's been a sign-off. But I don't know what they agreed. I think Todd Blanche agreed to reconfirm things that he's already said. And what he said was okay.
Well, Blanche had previously and infamously refused to say that he would put the end of the fund in writing. Take a listen.
But we are not moving forward with the fund, period.
Not moving forward ever.
Correct. Notwithstanding what we do in those litigations and defending our rights and making sure our rights are protected, we're not moving forward with the fund.
Okay.
Every time he was asked about formally killing the fund, Todd Blanche hedged. And that frustrated Cornyn and Tillis. But now they are prepared to take Todd Blanche at his word and vote to advance his nomination to the full Senate. All of this despite the fact that all along, the Justice Department, before and during Todd Blanche's stint as acting Attorney General, has been quietly making payouts to Trump allies. There have been millions of dollars in settlements that were paid to an anti-abortion activist convicted of violating the federal law that protects patient access to clinics, payouts to former Trump administration and campaign officials, as well as payouts to the family of January 6th rioter Ashley Babbitt. To be very clear, these payouts occurred outside of the $1.8 billion fund that Todd Blanche has now agreed to end. All of this suggests that his DOJ may be prepared to continue using taxpayer money to compensate the president's allies, even without the formal framework of the anti-weaponization fund. Joining me now to break it all down is Maya Wiley, former SDNY civil prosecutor and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. Also with us is David Litt, former Obama speechwriter, author of the Word Salad Substack, and a best-selling author. So, Maya, I'll start with you. What is your reaction to the senators who were so upset about the fund now being okay with these assurances that the fund is dead?
Well, I will say I am sadly unsurprised because having sat in the hearing room for some of Todd Blanche's nomination hearing, it was very clear they were looking, particularly Senator Tillis, was looking for the way out. Because remember, these are senators that at one time had said in writing means legislation from Congress, so that the executive branch just can't reignite a weaponization fund, not to mention whatever's happening with Trump and his family having immunity forever and ever and ever. So I say this because what should be shocking to all of us is that what is in writing is nothing short of Todd Blanche's commitment on an implementing document, not on something that says the parties to the settlement have now relinquished whatever their rights might be to claim breach of contract. I only say that we don't know what will happen, but Donald Trump hasn't signed a thing. Congress hasn't signed a thing. And to your point, the settlements can roll on.
Right. So let's leave aside the question of whether or not these are legally binding documents. David, what do you make of the fact that Tillis and Cornyn, both of whom have nothing to lose? They are not coming back to the Senate. They have, again, nothing to do with this president going forward. Why won't they stand firm on this and truly end the fund in real terms?
Well, let me start by saying I feel like I'm here with two very accomplished lawyers. I am not a lawyer. So, I have thoughts about like analogies and prepositions and stuff. But I will also say I do have familiarity as a human being who has done embarrassing things from time to time.
Yeah.
And Thom Tillis and John Cornyn should be deeply embarrassed about this. I mean, Trump saw through these two people. I mean, he saw through a lot of people in the Republican Party. But I think one of the things that he understood well before other Republican senators or Congress members understood it was the combination that these senators, they're extreme, but they're also weak. They were supposed to, as you said, have nothing to lose. Trump ended their political careers. This was their chance to get some revenge, to put one over on him, and the best they could do was a basically meaningless document.
These are not Virgos.
I'm a Virgo, so I don't know what that means. So is it good to be a Virgo or bad?
We are a very vengeful people, I think.
Agreed. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I'm a Capricorn. I don't know where that fits in here, but I will say this. It's worse than that because it wasn't just about vengeance. They actually believed what they were saying when they said it was bad, when they said we should not have it, when Congress should act and prevent any sitting president from doing what Senator Tillis himself this weekend called the payout pot for punks. That wasn't soft talk. That was what he meant. What he caved on and what Cornyn caved on were their actual principles. That's worse.
So under prior questioning by Senator John Cornyn, Todd Blanche actually admitted that Trump could try and enforce the terms of this settlement. So let's take a listen to that.
You have said that the weaponization fund is a moot issue. Is that your position?
Yes, it is a moot issue. I suppose if President Trump's counsel sought to enforce it, they potentially could.
Including the weaponization fund.
Well, they could try to enforce the contract.
Right. Maya, you're a lawyer. Does this document that Todd Blanche issued change anything about the possibility of the president resurrecting this fund in some way? Are these legally binding promises, or are there loopholes here that will allow this to come back well after Todd Blanche has gotten what he wanted?
Well, as I said, it's an implementing order. What that means is he's like, I'm not going to do this. So what does that have to do with a settlement that he entered into and with the parties themselves, including Donald Trump, not having said, we agree? And plus, he's the president of the United States. What we've already seen in the settlements themselves become a back door to making sure they can pay people.
So there are a lot of interesting things here. So one, these are settlements between the various agencies and these different principals, Donald Trump himself, the Trump sons, and then the Trump organization. And none of these people have had anything to say about this quote unquote implementing document. Going back to the whole question of this being a settlement, this was actually coming from a lawsuit. Is there any legal recourse here that the court could take or that any of the people involved here in the legal challenge could bring?
Well, look, we already have a very angry judge in this case because the judge already said, I think this is sanctionable. We had 38 former judges say this smells and there should be disciplinary action potentially taken here. This is one of the reasons why some of us have also argued that Todd Blanche is unfit to actually serve as the nation's top lawyer. But I say that because, yes, I mean, we could see a continuation of a judge saying, first of all, this was something that did not fall within the realm of something the court would have approved in terms of jettisoning the cases in the first place. But look, this is all unknown territory because none of this is normal.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing to say, this is so abnormal that every American should be deeply concerned and upset that this is supposed to be the department of the people and it's now just the department of just Trump.
Well, so David, to that point, is there any evidence that this is registering with ordinary Americans, that this is a fund that could be resurrected at any time? It's really at the pleasure of the president, at the pleasure of the attorney general, who seems to be the president's personal lawyer in much of this. Do people care that their tax dollars are being used in this way?
I think people care at a moment when it seems like every day there are 20 Watergate level scandals, and even J.D. Vance is out there saying, oh, Watergate would be fine now. Sometimes things do break through, and this broke through when it first was announced. And it's one of the reasons, I mean, it's nice to think that, everybody stuck to their guns and was deeply principled to say, we don't want this. I think the reason, or a big reason they didn't want it, was that they got caught. And that they realized that, particularly at a moment, by the way, when Americans are struggling to buy groceries, Americans are wondering what's going to happen to their energy bills. Every time we do something new and stupid in Iran, fuel costs go up, gas goes up. And so what is the president focused on? He's focused on spending $1.8 billion of your tax money you earned, to a bunch of insurrectionists because they supported him. That is not very hard to message. And I think to your point, I don't remember every word in the alliteration-filled quote from Thom Tillis, but you could tell that when he was saying that, he felt really good. He was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be making a point that people agree with, and now he's kind of shrinking away from that.